Hi, everyone.
Hi, welcome.
Hi.
Welcome back to Coffee and One Thing, where we're caffeinated and motivated.
Sure enough.
Today's episode 28, we're talking with my good friend Marc Giannone from Eaton Cambridge. He's also my financial advisor. And today we're going to talk about how we would secure our financial future. Our coffee this month is Maud's Coffee. Dreamy, creamy, salted caramel. That sounds like an Audrey's favorite.
And they have decaf and regular.
Nice.
Why would you have decaf?
Because
you don't want to be
after noon,
caffeinated
you're
and
not
motivated.
supposed to drink caffeine. So you can sleep at night so you don't mess up your body clock and stay up too late like me.
Okay. Does that happen?
All the time.
All right. Okay.
Nice. We now know.
So, well, Marc, thank you for coming. So how should we secure our financial future? What are some things you could tell us?
Yeah, I think in general, there's not a whole lot of things that you need to do. You just need to do a few very well over a long period of time. I think there's this sense that being financially prepared and getting to where you want to be, it's this complicated, sophisticated thing, but that's just not the truth.
Nice.
Especially in our country.
I'm sure a lot of people feel that's a good thing to hear.
It is. I don't
Take
think
a breath.
Yeah,
Right.
it's not
Right.
as complicated maybe as people make it out to be or want it to sound. So I think there's probably a dozen that you should be doing, but I think we're going to talk about just a few today. And again, this isn't specific advice. This is more general, just principles. But I think if people would do these principles, they would be in a great spot.
Nice.
So
Nice.
I'll just go through a couple of them and
Yes.
Before we jump
Before we
in,
jump in, yeah.
yeah.
will you tell us a little bit about
Let's hear
yourself?
about yourself.
Sure, yeah. So
How'd you get into the field?
yeah. Again, my name's Marc. Married to my wife Emily. We've got 2 kids. We live in
Nice.
downtown Phoenix. Been here for about 13 years now.
Okay.
Lived on the East Coast. Moved out here. Haven't gone back since. Started my career out at a large brokerage firm, one of the bigger ones, as an analyst, and then built my practice, and then merged with another firm about 10 years ago.
Okay.
So,
Cool.
yeah.
So thank you for all that. We just want to hear a little details
Yeah.
on how you got into this. Is there a story of like how you got into
What drew you to
Yeah.
financial planning?
Yeah, I've always been a planner, and I think from my growing up, it felt like money was always a very difficult thing and a tension-filled thing, even around my home with my parents. And I thought, what better way to serve other people than
Yeah.
to give them some peace of mind and confidence and clarity around their future? Because so much of our anxiety, everyone's anxiety,
It's true.
oftentimes stems from personal finance.
Right.
Right.
I totally.
So-
Absolutely.
I often get a call from Marc when things go a little awry on the stock market.
How did
lot
you
of
guys
emotions.
Just
meet?
in case.
My nephew.
Oh, okay.
My nephew Brad found him.
Okay.
Found Bob in.
Thank you, Brad.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. All right. Now let's dive in.
Yeah. So I mean, this one I might say it, and you think we wouldn't expect a financial advisor to say this, but I think there's a lot of value in identifying your values before you make financial decisions. Like, what is it truly that you value?
Yeah.
Do you value time freedom? Do you value not having debt? Do you value generosity? When you identify those and put them to paper and you start making financial decisions according to those values, you will make better financial decisions.
It makes sense.
That makes
You're going to
sense.
have a way better feeling about it. You're going to have more contentment with it. Because I think the danger is we get excited by shiny objects.
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
We all do.
Oh,
Squirrel.
Like
Squirrel,
me.
right?
The new
Yeah.
app. The new.
The new app, the new car, the
Yeah.
new
Yeah.
whatever that might be. And in the midst of it, it feels really good. But if it's not in alignment with who you are and what you value, at some point in time, it's very likely you're not only gonna regret that, but you're gonna almost despise the decision you made, because it's gonna be a burden when it was supposed to be a good thing.
Right.
So
It usually happens with boats.
boats, right? Like, that's a very good one.
Or RVs. Yeah.
It can be lots of different things.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
But I think until we articulate, like, what is it that we value as a family?
Right.
You can then have another filter to make financial decisions, and I think that you'll be much more content with your financial decisions that you make.
Mm-hmm.
But
Great
until
tip.
you start there, it's very difficult to do effective
Yeah.
planning.
Yeah.
I think that's true about so many things,
Yeah.
right? Even as a business owner, like setting those precedents of, okay, these are the things that I feel like are important and have value, and making all of your decisions based on that. Otherwise, like, I don't know about financial planning, but in real estate, we get stuff thrown at us all the time. This is the newest way to market. This is the newest thing to do.
Daily.
Yeah.
Yes, and you could be
You could spend $1 million.
100 different
Yeah.
places.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
because you pick a trajectory and a path you're going on, and then they start throwing stuff, and then
Right.
it makes you want to change your path.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's frustrating.
Yeah.
Yeah. An example would be, in your guys' world, even, a mortgage, right? Like, some people are perfectly comfortable and content with having the largest possible mortgage that they can have. And for them, that's an okay decision. Some people would say, well, I don't want any debt. I'm going to pay cash for a house. Now, I can tell you the right financial answer. There is one of those that's a better financial answer than the other, just based on the math of it. But someone might just choose to not have debt. And for them, that may be the right answer, because that's in alignment with their goals.
Right.
Right.
So there's a difference between the right financial answer and the right answer for you.
Right.
Yeah.
So you
Very
would
cool.
kind of dig into all of that and find like what's best for the person that you're.
We start there with every
Okay.
client and say,
Okay.
what is it that's important to you?
Yeah.
What do you value as a family? Where do you want to be in the future? And then we build a plan around what they value as a family.
Nice.
Yep.
Nice.
That makes sense.
So then,
Very
what's
cool.
your next step after you kind of dig into that part of it?
Yeah. So again, probably not one that's earth-shattering, not super sophisticated, but spend less than you make. That's not...
Sometimes easier said than done.
Easier said than done.
Right,
Easier
right.
said
Yeah.
than done.
Oh, for
Yeah.
sure.
But you can't even begin to think about paying off debt or accumulating assets unless you're not spending every dollar that you're making.
Right. That's a true statement.
And there's different ways that you can do that effectively, and there's tools that
Yeah.
are at everyone's disposal.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of different methods to do budgeting, and I think different things work for different people. But the important thing is that you know where is your money going, and you're spending less than you're making, so that you have the extra to be able to do other things with it.
Okay.
Have you done all these things with Mark, Scott?
Several times. Yeah, you
That's cool.
touch base with them, too, because things change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not, you start a plan, but the plan's in pencil.
The
Do you have
pens and
any
pencil.
Yeah.
tools that you've gathered along the way that have helped you take these steps?
None that I can think of off the top of
Oh.
my head.
I was just curious.
She's like putting
We'll
them on
ask
the spot.
Lisa later. No, I mean,
Yeah, so like a tool
Being
might
nosy.
be like we provide every client with an online. It's kind of like a financial dashboard.
Oh,
But it
cool.
allows you to get a very good sense of what your financial situation looks like right now,
Mm-hmm.
that you can touch base.
Which we've used that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And there's some budgeting features in that.
Right.
And then that's where we do a lot of our financial planning projections and,
Nice.
and a lot of the organization. But there's a lot of great tools that
Yeah.
you can use.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then from once you kind of realize, okay, here's where you're at, now how do you get people to the next step? How do they get to where they want to be?
Yeah. So I think the first step is making sure that you've got adequate emergency reserves. I've heard that a lot, like emergency reserve. As elementary that might sound to you or not, most Americans cannot afford a $400 emergency expense.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
the
scary.
reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for most people, before you even think about investing, you need to just have some cash on hand.
Right.
And that number depends upon a few different factors, but For most people, 3 to 6 months of their operating costs should be in cash. I've got clients that are in very volatile industries where their income is really high one year and non-existent the next. They carry substantial cash reserves just because they need to be able to ride the wave.
Yeah.
So they could have 1 to 2 to 3 years of cash on hand. But for most people, 3 to 6 months of just cash on hand, things come up, you don't expect to lose that job. Or you didn't expect that air conditioner to go out or 2 of them, or whatever the case might be. And instead of going into further debt to fund that, you need to have the cash.
Yeah.
Well, years ago, my husband and I went through a financial program, to help you start budgeting, start thinking about saving, and even that first, saving toward that first $1,000, right?
Yeah.
Of having that cushion.
Yep.
And how much stress that relieved.
Oh, yeah.
From me, I don't know. I mean, I don't know about Timothy, but for me, thinking about, oh my God, what if this happens or this, it made a big difference.
Yeah.
Did you see a lot of benefit for your client base with the shutdown during COVID and all that because of cash reserves? Did you see it kind of come where you were happy that your clients did that?
Yeah, I mean, it's times like those that all of a sudden people are not so concerned. Like right now, markets are doing well. People are like, why do I have to have this cash? Why can't we just invest that? And you almost have to remind them, because it's not going to always be like this.
Yes.
You're not always going to have plenty of money in the bank. So yeah, during COVID especially, people that were affected, very comforting to know that they've got cash on hand.
Right.
And I read an article somewhere saying that, 'cause it's on the internet, so obviously it's true.
I love that.
So that because of
sarcasm
COVID,
there.
we have, as a nation, we have more savings because people weren't out spending.
Yeah.
So
We're seeing that.
So that's kind of a good thing, I guess, to financially, people are a little more sound. Hopefully, they're not out spending it now.
I would say that I see, in general, our clients have more cash on hand than they have had in the past.
Yeah.
We'll see if that changes as people start cruising and doing everything else that they've been wanting to do.
And the Christmas spending,
and stuff like
well, I got extra money, I'll buy more presents.
But that's why it's important to have an emergency fund amount and stick to it.
Right.
Because the tendency, and this would be myself included, I say, hey, X amount is my emergency reserve number, right? Well, once you have X amount plus whatever, all of a sudden that feels a whole lot better.
Yeah.
You can easily let that number creep up to where it's imprudent to have too much because there's an opportunity cost. So I think it's important just to have a number and stick to it. Otherwise, I've got people that have, a decade worth of cash. Do they need that? No.
But now they're comfortable.
But now they're comfortable at it, and
Yeah.
they can't imagine living without it, right? So there's a balance.
Yeah.
You got to figure that out.
Okay, that makes sense. So now it's our next step.
So next step, so you've got your emergency fund covered. You need to start investing, right? And there's different ways to invest. I'm not going to get into the details now, but there's things like your 401k at work. Great opportunity for you to defer income into an account that gets to grow.
And somebody gives you money. So.
Especially if there's a match.
Especially if there's a match.
Yeah.
It's a great opportunity.
Right.
There's other accounts like Roth IRA accounts, or if you're a very high income earner, there's defined benefit plans and lots and lots of different tools.
Okay.
But once you've covered your emergency fund, you need to start thinking about your future. Right. And that's where some of those investment accounts come into play.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
So that's thinking about retirement.
Thinking about retirement. Yep. And clearly defining, and I think this would come out when you're on step number 1. What do you value?
What does that look like? What does retirement look like?
Yeah, what does retirement look like?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
If I value time freedom, I've got clients that want to retire at 45. They are sacrificing other things to retire at 45, and they will. They're not buying cars, and they're not buying things like that. They're saying, hey, I'm going to put that stuff off because I really want to retire. But they have a very clear understanding of what they're investing for. They have a clear understanding of what retirement looks like, very well documented, and a plan in place to get there.
Nice. Nice. Awesome. So now what's our next step? Once we've put some money into investing,
Mm-hmm.
we've got some 401k, some basic stuff like that. What other things would you say to get us to the final step.
Yeah. And I don't know if there's ever a final step. It's always
Yeah, I
a
was gonna
continuum,
say.
right?
Okay,
You're always
okay.
revisiting.
Fair enough.
And some of these aren't in exact order. I think the order is going to be dictated based upon your personal situation.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them you might not even have a need for. I think most of the ones we talked about right now already you do, but there's other ones that don't apply to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But one that I think probably applies to most people, and maybe it even should be bumped up in the list relative to what we already talked about, is estate planning. So what happens to your stuff when you die?
Right.
Yeah.
Or not even when you die, when you can't make a decision.
Right.
There's legal
Oh.
things that need to be in place in order for your health to be taken care of, for your money to be taken care of, both while you're living and unable to make decisions and after you've passed.
What about like a long-term policies, long-term care
Long-term.
policy?
Yeah, that's
Something like that.
that's a whole nother planning area. What I'm referring to more is like a will,
Oh,
A
okay.
trust.
I gotcha. Okay.
powers of attorney,
Okay.
because there's just a lot of complexity that once you start accumulating assets, which if you've done a good job at planning, that inevitably happens at some point
Right.
probably. You've got a house, you've got investment accounts, you've got kids. If you have kids and they're minors and you pass away, what happens to your kids?
Yeah.
Do you want someone else making that decision for you?
Yeah,
Or would
that's
you
huge.
rather make that decision now?
Yeah.
I can tell
It
you.
would be the courts, right?
Well, so get it down on paper.
Right.
Otherwise, and maybe, I think our system does a decent job at trying to make sure that what you would want to have happen would happen, but I don't want to leave that up to somebody else.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
That's a
Yeah.
responsibility we have. It's a
Yeah.
stewarding our families too.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And all the other stuff too. If you die and you've got a couple $1 million of net worth and the mechanisms aren't in place, like you don't have a trust that owns your assets,
Right.
or you don't have a will to dictate, a lot of that gets determined by the courts
'Cause
through the probate
probate,
process.
yeah.
And most people I know would say I'd rather make that decision than leave it to the hands of the
Yeah.
courts.
I've got a couple of clients who are in the middle of that, and it is not fun for
It's
them.
not fun.
Do you have someone in your office that helps with those things, or is that something separate?
Yeah, so we don't do that internally.
Okay.
We have discussions with clients just on best practices and stuff. But what we find our role is more of like the quarterback for our clients.
Right.
We handle some of these things direct, but we want to make sure that we're the one in the middle of it, just knowing everything that's going on and pulling all the pieces together.
Okay.
Because we have
So-
somebody on our Team Beery website. So go to your Team Beery website, and you'll pull off your things, and
Yeah.
there's somebody there.
There's some
So,
great estate
yeah.
planning attorneys, and there's great ones.
What are your thoughts on life insurance? And because you had helped me make a change a couple of years ago, and based on age and stuff.
Mhm.
Do you have any advice that?
Because Scott's getting old.
Yeah,
Nobody else just got.
I think life insurance is an important part of financial planning
Okay.
and determining whether you need it.
I'll
Is
get
the
you.
whole
I'll get you. To that.
is
You just won't. You'll, and when
We
you
know.
least expect
We
it.
know.
is a whole discussion. The kinds of there's a lot of different kinds of life insurance,
Yeah.
and so determining what's best for you is again based on your
Specific.
personal circumstance. But in general, Scott, I'd say that if you've got kids and you're not yet to the point where you feel like you could retire, and then you've probably got some risk there.
Right.
Like if something happened to you and your income went away, would your spouse or loved ones have a
Right.
need? If the answer is yes, then you probably have to have some sort of life insurance.
Something in place.
And how you determine that number and what kind is a totally different conversation.
Right.
But I think it is an important part
Right.
of being responsible to your family and
Right.
making sure that you take care
Well,
of things.
yeah, and rule of thumb my family always used was have the amount of life insurance on yourself that would pay off the debt you have. So, because, our debt was more back in, because from dairy farming, we just kept it at a certain level for feeding cows. Well, my dad's policy was if something happened to him, it would pay off that debt.
Mhm.
If nothing else, then they still have to work, but at least they're
Yeah.
debt
At least they're
free.
debt free.
Yeah.
That's a good
That
point.
Sometimes you
makes
had to
sense.
have
That
debt.
makes
I
sense.
mean, not everybody can go out and pay cash for a house.
Yep.
But
Right.
if you have a reasonable mortgage, do you have a policy that would pay that off if something happened to
Right.
you or something like
Right.
that?
No, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well,
Any other tips?
Any other tips? What else we got?
Tricks?
Yeah, talked about those a few. I think those. Here's another, not a specific tip, but just in general. Planning is just a thing of paper until you do something with it, right? So a plan without action is just a plan. So I would say that of these 5, if you even just did 1, or you did
Just start.
2, just
Right.
start, but do something. Don't just think about it.
Right.
Because thinking is great, but it's a starting point. And without action, it's nothing.
Yeah.
So I'd say with all the stuff, even just not getting overwhelmed by all the huge homework list of things that you feel like you need to get done, make one the priority and say, I'm going to get this done by the year end.
Yeah.
And then do the next one.
And then do the next one when the time comes. But start with one, get it done,
Yep.
move forward.
And part of I had a question come up.
Yeah.
Part of someone coming to you and saying, I need help figuring out my financial plan. Do you suggest different types of investment?
We do, yeah. So we've got a very, detailed and investment strategy philosophy that we
Nice.
think works, and it's proven to work. And so that's what we do. And that's there's
Okay.
a lot that goes into that.
And
But
it
yeah,
probably depends
that-
on what their risk.
there's a lot of
what
factors
they're
into
willing
that,
to
right?
risk.
But it's
and
like
what they're willing
that can
to-
seem really overwhelming. Like I'm not a researcher really or any of that kind of, and I'm like, how do you know what to pick?
Yeah.
How do you know what to do? Like so.
Yeah.
They will help you with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it starts with a plan,
Right.
right? So
Right.
how do you know how to invest your money unless you know what you're investing your money for?
Right.
I think the tendency in our industry has been, come talk to me and I'll tell you what the best way to invest is. If someone comes to me and says that, I'd say, well, eventually we'll get there, but we need to start with a plan. And if they say, no, I just want you to invest our money, I'd say, well, you're just not a good fit. Like, we're not going to do that. That's just not wise.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially without knowing their goals.
Yeah, you've got to
Yeah.
know their goals. And everyone has, as we talked about, everyone has different goals
And different risk.
and different
Yeah,
risks.
Like what
and-
they're willing to.
Yeah, there's
okay.
so many variables. So, again, there's some financial planning principles, some of which we talked about today, but they all have a personal application depending upon who we're talking to.
Nice.
All right.
Very cool.
Well, thank you so much. for
Yeah.
coming.
You bet. It's,
Yep.
it's fun.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mark, for sharing
Good thoughts.
your expertise with us. Thanks for being willing to be on camera
Yeah.
with me.
Looking forward to it.
Let's see. Remember to like, subscribe, or share.
Yep.
Don't forget to go to our website if you need any help or tips.
Teambeery.com.
Teambeery.com.
We've got great resources.
And next week, we will talk about more of this stuff that we talked
Dive in
about.
deeper,
We'll dive
yeah.
in deeper. Thanks, and have a good day.
All right. He's out.
Thanks.